Hi, I think we'll get started. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this podcast. My name is Rebecca. I'm a 3L student at the University of Toronto, Faculty of Law, and I'm a member of University of Toronto Legal Hackers. Throughout this year, we've put together a number of podcast episodes, and today we're going to be talking about an interesting topic about the Ontario Securities Commission and the way that they've decided to regulate crypto trading platforms. So with me today, I have our specialist, Gloria from the OSC. And Gloria, would you like to take a moment and introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Gloria. I'm a legal counsel with the Compliance and Registrant Regulation Branch at the Ontario Securities Commission. In this role, I work with various staffs of the other branches within our branch, and we handle registration and compliance matters, as well as exempt of relief from certain securities law requirements where requested, as well as policy matters.
Amazing. Thanks, Gloria. So I guess as Gloria knows, and I guess as I know, we've sort of taken some time throughout this year to do some research with a number of 1L students. We have a great group of students together, putting together research on this topic, and we thought that it would be a great opportunity to ask Gloria about some of the more recent developments since we've done our research. So I guess we'll go ahead and get started. One thing that we wanted to ask you right at the beginning of today's podcast episode is perhaps if you could just talk a little bit about Bitcoin in particular. We know that's one particular crypto asset that gets a lot of press and a lot of attention from the news media, but would you be able to tell our listeners what exactly it is and how it works?
Absolutely. Before we start, I'd just like to note that any views I express on this podcast are my own personal views and don't necessarily reflect the views of the Ontario Securities Commission or any other staff. The information discussed is for informational purpose and doesn't constitute legal or accounting advice. And it's been summarized or paraphrased for the purposes of this discussion. So I just wanted to flag that. So in terms of Bitcoin, it's a crypto asset that was created in 2009, and it's a native token of the Bitcoin blockchain. So blockchain is a type of database that is online. It's shared among different computers on a network. Bitcoin is a type of crypto asset because it uses cryptography to be secured. All Bitcoin transactions are verified by massive amounts of computing power via a process known as mining. There's no physical Bitcoin, so it only exists digitally, and balances are recorded on that public ledger, the blockchain, and everyone has access to it. It's not issued or backed by any government or bank, rather it's created by the people and intended for the people. Bitcoin is used as a medium exchange, store of value, or a unit of account. So you can use it to purchase goods, but most people also right now use it for investment purposes.
Thanks, Gloria. You mentioned that Bitcoin is an exchange or a medium of exchange, and so you can use it to purchase goods. We were just curious if you could tell us a little bit more about how that exchange actually works and how people transfer Bitcoin from one person to another person.
So an individual can get Bitcoin if they mine. They earn rewards in Bitcoin for doing the mining. And then they can also acquire it if they sell a good and someone wants to pay them in Bitcoin, they can receive it. Or they can go onto a crypto asset trading platform where they deposit money or crypto and they can buy or trade, buy using fiat or other crypto, or they can trade their existing crypto for other types of crypto, and Bitcoin being one of those. So there's a variety of ways of getting Bitcoin.
And Gloria, you mentioned a little bit about like the trading platforms and how you can trade. Can you go into a little bit of detail on what a crypto trading platform really is?
So crypto asset trading platform, it comes in different forms. Traditionally, it's been a website where users will log on and then they'll be able to see the different price of Bitcoin. They can then enter how much they'd like to buy or trade. But it's also now a mobile app, so you can download it onto your phone and it appears the same way. It's like any other place where you can see the price of Bitcoin and then request to purchase or trade or sell the Bitcoin.
Thanks. That makes a lot of sense. So we understand that the OSC has decided to start regulating CTPs or crypto trading platforms. What was the rationale behind this decision? Was it, to sort of help investors, or was there another rationale that you had in mind?
So a firm that is involved in the trading of securities is required to be registered under securities law in Ontario. And this would apply no matter what shape or form the security takes place. In terms of crypto assets, some of them are securities or derivatives in and of themselves, so they are security. Others, we note that even if Bitcoin is commonly considered a commodity, but even where it is a commodity, because if there's no delivery of that commodity to the client only has a right to the crypto asset, and they have a claim against the platform for that crypto asset. So we consider that instrument or contract to be a security, as it falls within different paragraphs or prongs of the definition of security. And so when a firm is trading in securities and derivatives, there is a registration requirement if they trip the business trigger, which we refer to as if they're in the business of trading securities.
I see. So from the sound of it, one of the reasons that you are deciding to regulate crypto trading platforms is specifically because they trade in these particular contracts.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, obviously there is a investor protection concern, as we've all seen from Quadriga and the failures there.
Right. Would you be able to elaborate a little bit on that?
So Quadriga was a crypto asset trading platform, and probably the largest one in Canada. And most of the private keys for the crypto assets were held by one individual. Fortunately, when he passed away, no one was able to access those keys. The OSC did a review of the platform post-mortem, and they determined that it was actually a Ponzi scheme. And unfortunately, a number of Canadian and international investors lost all of their crypto assets to this platform. So it does raise the risk that clients and investors should know who they're trading with and understand the entity that they're giving their money and holding their crypto.
And I'm curious, even if this particular case, if it wasn't a Ponzi scheme, if one individual had held all the keys and passed away, would the investors have been in the same position regardless, even were it a legitimate business? Would they have been able to retrieve any of that?
Well, it depends on what backups and safeguards there are in relation to the holding of those private keys. Just for some of the listeners who might not understand what we're referring to in terms of private key is Bitcoin has a public key, which is the address that you see on the blockchain, but it's also a private key, which allows you to control that Bitcoin and transfer it. And so you need that private key in order to be able to move those crypto assets. And without it, once it's lost, it's gone forever, and the crypto assets are no longer accessible. The private keys can be printed on paper. They can be, I've heard that they sometimes are embedded into a metal panel. They're stored in bank security boxes, or they can be stored on devices that look like a USB key. There are different ways of holding those private keys. And one of the things we consider when we're registering a firm is what are the controls in place and the backups and safeguards? How are key person risks avoided? So does one person have control of all the keys? Where are they kept? Are they safe and secure? So
I see. So I guess that really highlights the importance of having some sort of regulation and making sure that these private keys are perhaps kept in a manner in which the investors themselves will be able to access them when they need to. That makes a lot of sense. You mentioned registration, and I guess we talked about why CTPs have to register. What's the consequence of registration? Are there any additional disclosure requirements or so on that apply to firms afterwards?
So firms that seek registration, they need to submit an application, and then we review them. The cornerstones of the registration are solvency, integrity, and proficiency. So we consider those and we look at the applicants for those factors. Once the firm is registered, they're required to comply with certain requirements, including maintaining certain insurance, having adequate capital to continue ongoing operations. They need to provide certain disclosures to clients. And for example, they need to disclose any conflicts of interest that are material. They also need to have policies and procedures in place to ensure that they have a system of controls to comply with securities law, but also to mitigate against their business risks. So a lot of it is common sense and good business practices as well. So we don't necessarily view the registration requirements to be onerous.
I'm wondering, do the trading platforms themselves view them to be onerous, or are they generally playing ball pretty easily?
I mean, I think you have those platforms who are willing and understand the need for registration and regulation. I think the chair of the SEC has described it as the Wild West, and bringing in regulation and oversight into this industry actually will help it grow, because people would feel more confident in the system. They feel that it brings it improves their reputational aspects by being registered. It provides rules that investors, issuers of crypto assets, and platforms themselves know that everyone's going to play with and comply with. So I think regulation actually is very helpful. And then it also makes it more attractive for institutional investors, which is where a lot of the, lack of a better word, big money comes from, right? And it helps them know that if there are rules that everyone's playing with, it makes them more comfortable and getting into this space.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially given what you said earlier about, I guess, some of the dangers to investors when those are televised and publicized. I can imagine that would really have a chilling effect on the market unless there are special rules by which everyone has to play. Just to, maybe perhaps wrap up our discussion on this topic of regulation, I understand that the OSC is responsible also for regulating a lot of other securities issuers, whether that's shares or bonds or other types of securities. Is the approach to, I guess, crypto asset trading platforms similar, different than the OSC's approach to these other types of issuers, and sort of how does that look, or how do they compare with one another? If they're similar, how so? If they're different, how are they different?
So, from our view, securities law applies no matter what format they take. Our rules are technology neutral. So for crypto asset trading platforms, we haven't established new requirements for them. What we have done is applied our existing regulations, but where a specific requirement doesn't make sense, we've granted exemptive relief from that requirement. So in that way, we're able to tailor the requirements to the operations of their crypto asset trading platforms. Obviously, this is a very new area, and as we learn more and as more platforms get registered, we are constantly evaluating. We're constantly in discussions and engaging in discussions with the platforms to understand what is and what isn't working, what doesn't make sense for them. And so that's how we're evolving with the industry in this area. But essentially, our existing requirements are technology neutral and are applied to these firms.
Mm-hmm.
Gloria, I was going to say, Rebecca, do you have anything else you want to ask on the crypto trading platform side? I was going to spin it over and see for any of our listeners out there who are students, some things that can help them get prepared for a potential career in this field. But I don't want to cut you off if there's additional questions that you wanted to ask on that portion.
Nope, absolutely. All done. Go ahead.
So Gloria, obviously, being a part of the Future of Law Lab, the University of Toronto Faculty of Law, we do engage primarily with students who haven't quite decided where they want to go in their careers. And a lot of the trainings for the students are based on, how the law might have looked 20, 30, 40 years ago. And this is quite a new variation on what securities law can be. And so I'm curious, for law students who want to move into securities law, but need to know about this particular key element, what do they need to know about the regulation of CTPs and about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency?
I think it's like any novel area, understanding of the technology and how it operates is helpful, but also having a strong basis and understanding of the securities law requirements and the policy rationales for those requirements. There's a lot of areas where you have to assess how it can apply to these firms and does it make sense. And it's not necessarily having a good foundation in the substantive law is always helpful, but also being willing to have the soft skills to acknowledge where you need more information, where you need to get expert advice on, as well as being able to think in the gray areas where questions are not necessarily black and white, and being able to understand and analyze and problem solve. So those soft skills are actually very helpful when you're dealing with novel or changing areas.
And I think you hit on a really interesting point there, talking about asking for help or collaborating with other individuals, because obviously things like cryptocurrency trading platforms, they can be a little bit technical. And I'm wondering, do you need a technical background to get into this type of thing, or is this where you connect with, the CTOs around the world and partner with them to help determine what the regulations might be?
I think you've hit it on the head. I think it is very much collaborative process. No one can be an expert in everything. I'm sure there are people who are, but I'm certainly not, and I do rely on expertise from technology specialists. So the OSC has hired individuals who have expertise and knowledge in the areas. As I mentioned earlier, we do reach out to the firms and we do ask for information and discuss with them. And we also engage our own experts, third parties, to provide advice to us and to explain things to us. So being able to acknowledge where your limitations are, being able to do research, and being able to be curious and ask the right questions and not be afraid to say, I don't know, and I need someone else who knows better than me to explain this to me. I think those are all skills that are helpful.
And is that an evolution of the Ontario Securities Commission? Is that hiring individuals of other disciplines and working together? Is that something that would have happened 20 years ago?
I think so. I think it really depends on the need. So for example, in our corporate finance branch, we have experts in, I'm going to probably butcher or say this incorrectly, but experts in mining. So we do have experts there who are able to help with the mining issuers and reviewing their prospectuses and what are the key disclosure risks there that should or shouldn't be disclosed. So it's not exactly new, but certainly it's always helpful.
Really impressive to hear that the OSC has just been so forward thinking in this manner. I find that not every discipline of law is so willing to collaborate or to acknowledge our limitations. And it's great that the OSC is just progressive in this manner and understands that sometimes the best way that we can reach solutions is to collaborate with people who are experts in their field. And if we can borrow that expertise, why reinvent the wheel on the legal side? Why not just work with them?
Yeah, exactly.
I guess speaking of reaching out to others who are perhaps more expert than you, are there any sort of resources or pieces of advice that you'd sort of recommend for students who are looking to get into this area? Perhaps, especially if they don't have a technical background, as mentioned before?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, a lot of people are familiar with YouTube. You can learn a lot there. But the OSC has issued its own guidances on our views on how CTPs and our securities law would apply to those. Those are available on our website. But also there's other resources from other securities commissions that a number of them have web pages about crypto assets. So those are all various resources to help students understand and learn more about this area.
And I hate to pry, and feel free to not answer this question if you don't want, but could you let us know a little bit about your career path and how you ended up in the position that you're in?
So my career path wasn't straightforward. I articled at a litigation firm, but I knew I didn't want to do litigation. It wasn't for me. And so then I pivoted into doing contracts at a hospital. And from there, I went to the Auditor General's office, where I was involved in what's referred to as value for money audits, as well as financial statement audits for the province. And then from there, I went to a bank, and then I landed at the OSC. So it wasn't a straightforward path, but all of those positions really involved understanding and being able to draft documents, willingness to learn new areas, new topics, and involved also compliance, I would have to say.
But I think that's really good for students to hear that, there is no one set path, and that you don't always need to know coming out of law school where you envision your career ending up. Sometimes you're picking up transferable skills in each of the different roles that you're in. And, as doors open, you've got the skills to move into that field, and, you can just kind of take the opportunities as they come. So it's always wonderful to hear people that kind of bounce around and then figure out something that they're really passionate about and they really like to be involved with.
I think you're absolutely correct. Being open-minded to the opportunities that come your way, that sometimes creates the most interesting paths for a career.
Yeah, I mean, who could have known that I would be, working at the Future of Law Lab at the University of Toronto? This has only been in existence for 2 years now, and maybe 20 years ago, all of these aspects that we talk about, cryptocurrency and predictive analytics and machine learning, these things weren't at the forefront of lawyers' minds, not even in society in general at that point. And so I think it always pays to keep your options open and be willing to, learn. Always be open to learning every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great that U of T has this lab opened. Are you able to share a little bit of how you feel that those activities would, can align and introduce students to tie into some of the activities that we're doing at the OSC with innovative businesses?
Yeah, so one of the programs that we actually have is called the Future of Law Fellowship. And Rebecca actually did this at one point earlier in her law career. But the general idea behind it is, for anyone who's listening who's not one of our law students and hasn't heard me pitch it a million times over, is that our students have the opportunity to, in a partnership, work together on creating their own legal technology platform. And part of this legal technology platform is finding an idea in a space that they're passionate about, a legal challenge, and creating not necessarily a technology product, but it often ends up being a technology product in that area. And so understanding and working with regulators like the Law Society of Ontario and figuring out in terms of a legal technology, what is being regulated, working with a group like the Ontario Securities Commission or even the Innovation Office at the OSC and learning about, if I did want to get listed at one point, how would I go about doing this? Or if I was in the crypto or Bitcoin space, what do I need to know? How am I being regulated? I think there's very clear tie-ins there. But more than anything else, I think it's just kind of, if you are an entrepreneur, talking to other people in the field who are working with these types of people and learning, what are the challenges that they're facing? What are the problems that they're trying to solve can be really helpful. And so I see that being like a very clear alignment between what the OSC is doing and what we're trying to do and promote at the Future of Law Lab.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think one of the largest and growing fields is the combination of technology with regulation, so reg tech, and how it can be applied to help streamline and make more efficient the oversight and compliance with regulatory requirements for pretty much any entity, because all entities have some legal obligations, whether it ranges from bribery and anti-bribery requirements or anti-money laundering requirements or paying taxes. So certainly those are combining law and the technology can help facilitate those.
And that's just the way that the world seems to be moving. I mean, almost all companies are tech companies in some capacity now. So you've got to figure it out one way or the other. But speaking of the future of law, I want to kind of circle back to some of these ideas. We're always talking about, what the evolution of law looks like or what's coming in the future. And so one of the questions that we wanted to ask you about is what trends or issues in the crypto CTP space do you see becoming more prominent in the future?
Well, the crypto space is changing very rapidly. So a couple of years ago, the entire focus was on initial coin offerings, initial token offerings, and then it's moved on to trading platforms. And we see now another shift to NFTs, to staking and lending, so other activities involving crypto. And then who knows what other changes or how it will shift in the future. So certainly a very rapidly changing area and keeps you on your toes.
Is there anything that our future lawyers can do to prepare for these trends?
Just be willing to learn and understand the changes as they go.
Yeah, it's hard to jump in front of things when they're evolving at a mile a minute.
Yeah. It sounds like a fascinating area of law, though. So it sounds like your work must be very interesting.
I do enjoy it quite a bit. I like the aspect of the policy work with the balancing the regulatory requirements and investor risk with the business needs and trying to find that balance that works for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's also something that we often push at the Future of Law Lab is just really understanding what a lawyer's role is, that it's not always just pointing out risks on the legal side. It's understanding, what are the goals of the company? What are their business goals? And being able to and not seeing it really as a dichotomy, but seeing them as hand in hand, that the business goals match the legal goals and working to promote both of them, I think is a really key element for young lawyers to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I think that in any legal role, you're always working within a business, and how do you support that business while managing the risks? I think that's a very important point that you've raised.
Exactly.
Well, Josh, I don't have any more questions for Gloria on my end. I don't know if you do.
Not particularly. I've really enjoyed the discussion, and Gloria, I appreciate you being so kind of free flowing and being able to go with it as we go. I think I just want to finish it off by asking, is there anything else that you would want students or any of our listeners to know about the OSC's role in the regulation of this type of space, or even what the OSC is doing in general?
I mean, I think the OSC is a great organization, clearly, since I work there. I think it does take innovation and very seriously, and it tries to strive that balance between addressing the risks and ensuring that businesses can compete and be innovative. And anyone who's interested in that, which I can't imagine no one would be, should all come and apply. And we're always interested in new ideas and people joining.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like the OSC is going anywhere. I mean, if anything, I can only envision you growing as these types of things take off, and in the need for this type of regulation. Like as you've mentioned, I mean, institutional investors are relying on this type of thing to be somewhat stable and organized. And so we're going to need the best and brightest young minds to kind of step into these new roles and stay ahead of these always evolving trends and be the ones that can actually add some stability to this somewhat volatile area.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, thank you very much, Gloria. And Rebecca, I'll pass it over to you to kind of just sum everything up.
Yeah, no, want to really echo what Josh has already said. Thank you so much for taking your time to speak with us this morning, Gloria. I guess just one last note for our listeners out there, do check us out. This is, the Future of Law and Legal Hackers' first podcast series. And so we have a lot of other interesting topics that are also being talked about. So please do check out the rest of this series. Take care, everyone.